From local stories to Wayne County news, get ready to dive into everything happening in North Carolina with Taylor House Publishing. Got a story to share? Shoot us an email at taylorpublishinghouse@gmail.com. If you're looking to publish your book or need some top-notch mentorship, we've got your back. Join the excitement with the one and only Richard Taylor, right here at Taylor House Publishing. Speak with Richard directly at 919-587-7782. Don't forget to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and invite your family and friends to watch.
From Wayne County to the Carolina coast, Taylor House brings the news you love most. Tune in on YouTube, don't miss a beat. Local stories that keep you in your feet.
Taylor House, we got the scoop. Taylor House Publishing.
All right, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is Richard Taylor, and I'm back with another video. And you see from the caption, this video is about one-time Wayne County detective, Mr. Bobby Braswell, who was charged with 22 counts of basically sleeping with inmates in the Wayne County jail. And basically, for these 22 counts, 22 felonies, he received a literal slap on the wrist, 90 days in jail. Now, how did I come about this case? We were talking about the Bob's convenience store and its long time propensity to have crime at that store. And so someone said, well, it's either the father of Mr. Braswell right here was the owner of that store. And you said, Bobby Braswell was a one-time deputy and he got caught with sleeping with inmates. So, of course, the story piqued my interest. So I went to the courthouse. I asked for, I looked up the charges, and yes, it is listed on the search engine for criminal offenses that Bobby Davis Braswell had those charges from 1997 to 1999. It was about 22 charges, 12 counts of sexual activity by custodian, 9 counts of crime against nature, and 1 count of attempted crime against nature. So I gave the clerk the information for her to pull up the court file so I can look through that file, and the court clerk told me that, that file is too old and, I would have to request it from the State Bureau of Investigation. I said, okay. Now, being that Mr. Braswell was a former detective, I expected as such. A lot of times, they kind of cover up, the sins of someone of their own. And by their own, I mean, under the employ of the judicial system. So nevertheless, I went to the police department. Same result. Now we can't find any information on that. So when all else failed, you go to the Wayne County Public Library and you look up the microfilm. And so I did as such, and I pulled up these 2 articles about the case, and it will surprise you once again how this case was pretty much handled, how the trial or lack thereof of a trial was handled, and how this guy who they're saying, these basic charges, and I'm going to explain what these charges mean: sexual activity by a custodian and crime against nature. They are giving him the lowest form of charges that can happen in this case. Now, according to me and a person who knows actually one of the victims that was a victim of Mr. Braswell's debauchery, said that he would go into the jail and, pretty much just have relations with the inmates right there in the jail. Now, the article says that he would take them down to an investigator's room. However, this person said that, he would do it right there in the cell. So, allegedly. Now, I must say Mr. Braswell has since passed. I think he passed last year sometime. So, regardless of his indiscretion, I do have to say bless the dead, rest his soul. But we have to look at this in terms of the inequities in the justice system. And as we see right now, this happened in 1999. The case happened in 1999. So he received a slap on the wrist. Now, we all know what Mike Cox and Chris Worth are accused of as well, and they have yet to be sentenced. So I want to just highlight how this case went, and just ride with me for a minute as I go over this article. You see it here. Ex-investigator faces sexual offense charges. And the article states, a former investigator with the Wayne County Sheriff Department surrendered to authorities today after being indicted Tuesday by a Wayne County grand jury on 22 counts of sexual offense with inmates. Bobby Davis Braswell, 47, was charged with 12 counts of sexual activity by a custodian, 9 counts of crime against nature, and 1 count of an attempted crime against nature. The charges involve 5 women, inmates of Wayne County Jail. Braswell's bonds were set at $50,000. Magistrate Bob Holmes said, if Braswell cannot post a bond, Sheriff Carey Winders said he will be transferred to another institution, perhaps a state prison for quote-unquote safekeeping to await trial. Winder said his office would not recommend the bond amount. He said it will be up to the discretion of the magistrate, just as it is for everyone else. Now, I'll stop there. Now, here you see that all of the charge that he was facing, and he only received a $50,000 bond. Now, these charges are a Class E and a Class I felony. So, even though they are the lower class, and I'm going to explain what they mean in a minute, they still, $50,000 bond for 22 felonies, and you are a public official held to a higher standard, right? And they're going to mention this in the article. So if you are held to the higher standard, shouldn't your bond be higher as well? And Winder said that his office would not recommend the bond amount. Now, what does he mean? Because are you saying that, you would recommend that he get out without bond, or he be held with no bond? There's a very ambiguous statement made. And then it mentioned that he would be transferred to another institution if he could not make bail for quote-unquote safekeeping. Now, $50,000 bail, back then $5,000. Back then $5,000 is still not considered a lot of money for someone in Mr. Braswell's position. So I'm pretty sure he made that bail without any problem. But if he didn't make the bail, then he will be held in safekeeping to avoid someone getting at him. Because anytime you accused of sexual crimes, then people in jail will kind of get at you, because that's considered the lowest of the low of crime that one can commit. But let's continue. He said if convicted on each count of the indictment, Braswell could face up to 280 months in prison. For first-time offenders, sexual activity by a custodian carries a 15 to 20-month sentence, and crime against nature carries a 3 to 4 month term, the sheriff said. Now, these crimes, what exactly is crime by a custodian? So, general statute, as you look with me, 1427.31, sexual activity by a substitute parent or custodian, right? It talks about if a defendant who has assumed the position of a parent in the home of a minor victim engages in vaginal intercourse or sexual act with the victim who is a minor residing in the home, the defendant is guilty of a Class C felony. Now, that doesn't apply, but the next definition does. If a person having custody of a victim of any age, or a person who is an agent of or employee of any person or institution, whether such institution is private, charitable, or governmental, having custody of a victim of any age, engages in vaginal intercourse or sexual act with such a victim, the defendant is guilty of a Class E felony, and consent is not a defense to charge under this section. So basically, in this case, Section B is relevant because the person was in the custody of the Wayne County Jail, and Bobby Braswell, being an employee of the Wayne County Jail, was a governmental custodian. And so basically, they're just giving him the least charge of having sex with the inmate. Now, also, what is crime against nature, right? North Carolina, you can read along with me. Crime against nature is a sex crime that criminalizes certain acts such as unnatural copulation between humans, bestiality, sodomy, buggery, sex acts with minors, prostitution, fellatio, cunnilingus, and analingus. Now, I had to look up buggery because I never heard of that, but buggery is pretty much anal sex, and anal, I had to look up, well, cunnilingus and analingus is pretty much self-explanatory. So they're charging him with these crimes as well, 9 counts, and they carry up to 3 to 12 months in prison. And so these crimes, while they were given to him, are probably not what really happened. These women who were in custody, in my opinion, probably had sex against their will. In my opinion, these were the lowest form. He probably was taking those women down there against their will, excuse me, because they are in custody. And so, let's continue the article. It says, Braswell, a former volunteer rescue squad member, was hired in 1984 as a part-time deputy sheriff by former Sheriff James Sasser. He was promoted to full-time in 1992 as a child support enforcement officer. When Winders was first elected in 1994, he promoted Braswell to detective. No other law officers were involved in the allegations. Braswell resigned his position as a detective sergeant on April 16th after allegations surfaced during a preliminary investigation by the sheriff's department. I can tell you I have lost many hours of sleep over this, said Winders. It is disheartening when someone you trust does not represent you in a manner you wish. He said the allegations sent shockwaves through the entire department. Braswell, who lives in Goldsboro, has declined comment. However, when he resigned, he told the News Argus that he had been set up. He is accused of engaging in sexual activity with inmates between March 27, 1997 and April 13, 1999. Once the sheriff department found the allegations against Braswell had merit, Winder said he contacted the district attorney's office and requested that the State Bureau of Investigation make a further inquiry. The SBI turned over its investigation to the state attorney general's office, which then turned over its findings to the grand jury. 2 sources have said the evidence against Braswell included a videotape. The sheriff said he did not know where the alleged activities took place. The sheriff said that the indictment sent a clear message that this type of conduct cannot be tolerated. Now, Winders once again said that, he had lost a lot of sleep over this. And the accused, Mr. Braswell, at the time declined to comment, but he mentioned that he had been set up. Now, that's very telling because he didn't mention or state that he didn't do it. He said that he had been set up. Now, earlier in the article, the article mentioned that no other officers were involved in the allegations, which I find that hard to believe because here the guy said that he had been set up. So that means that somebody knew what he was doing all the while. You can't tell me with that many people in that such a close quarters that no one knew what Detective Bobby Bring Downstairs Braswell was doing with the inmates. Now, that is hard for me to believe. Nevertheless, they said that once the allegations were found, they called in the SBI, and of course, the SBI, State Bureau of Investigations. It's hard for Wayne County to address or police itself, so someone always from the outside has to do it. But also they said the evidence contained a videotape. Now, Mr. Bobby Backdoor Braswell was downstairs, videotaping, or even, probably using the cameras that was in the interrogation room or the cells, for his own personal pleasure. But once again, you're going to see the sentence that they gave the man for this. Now, the sheriff said, once again, the indictments should send a clear message that this type of conduct cannot be tolerated. Winders noted that the deputy sheriffs by state statute are held to a higher standard than any other law enforcement officer because of their positions of public trust. Braswell was accused by one victim of 1 count each of sexual activity by a custodian and a crime against nature between November 20th and December 2nd, 1998. A second victim charged him with 2 counts of each offense between November the 12th and November the 30th, 1988. A third victim charged him with 5 counts of each offense between September the 24th, 1998 and April 13, 1999. And it goes on to say all the victims with 2 more listed. Winder said the only safeguard that he can put in place is to instill in his officers that their behavior, whether off duty or on duty, is a reflection of this office. I cannot be with everyone 24 hours a day, but I hope that they conduct themselves in a proper way. The sheriff said he will send some investigators to an internal affairs school to learn how to deal with the in-house problems. He said the department has been negligent in that kind of thing and will institute new policies in interviewing inmates of the opposite sex. So what's bad about this is that it won't affect just one officer, Winder said. The public looks at everyone up there. When you have one bad apple, they'll consider the whole basket bad. I hope the public won't judge us by one of the officer's actions. The sheriff said his department will continue to strive to be professional and responsible per public service. Now, once again, this is 1999, right about the time that Mike Cox also killed William Shane Jones. So we all know what Mike Cox did. So this is right around the time, and of course, these are probably pre-written statements written by lawyers when these things happen, and interviews have to be set forth. But he talks about sending officers to internal affairs school and things of that nature. But that's all well and fine. But he says also that this should send a clear message that this type of conduct cannot be tolerated. Well, let's see if the sentence sends that much of a clear message. So let's look at these 2 articles right here. The sentence. Now, this article is from May of 2001 when he was sentenced, right? And look at this title. Braswell sentenced to 90 days in jail. A former detective sergeant with Wayne County Sheriff Department was sentenced Tuesday to 90 days in state prison after pleading guilty to 5 counts of having sex with 5 women inmates of the county jail. Bobby Davis Braswell, who worked full-time for 7 years with the Sheriff Department, had faced a 22-count indictment. 49-year-old defendant who lives in Goldsboro pled guilty to 4 felonious counts of sexual activity by a custodian and a misdemeanor count of attempted crime against nature. Each count involved one of the 5 women. He did not speak during the 30-minute hearing in Wayne County Superior Court. Earlier, he denied the accusations and said only that he had been set up. The 11th hour plea agreement arrangement was finished just before court opened at 9:50. A pool of more than 100 jurors had been summoned to hear the case. Now, Braswell will serve the active sentence within 2 years on a schedule to be determined by his probation officer. He will be segregated from the general population. Now, also a 25 to 39 month sentence was also suspended by Judge George Lanning of Charlotte if Braswell completes 5 years of supervised probation and pays a $1,000 fine and $115 in court costs. Wow, is all I can say. They dropped all of they dropped about 8 counts of sexual activity by custodian, 5 counts of crime against nature, or 6 counts of crime against nature, and he received the plea. An 11th hour plea, meaning that they were already set to go to trial, and right before the trial, here they come with the plea. Now, the plea agreement, how can you give someone 90 days for all of these crimes when he was a detective supposedly taking care of the inmates, but he was in there violating them? Let's be serious, violating them. And once again, I doubt that all of these 5 women willingly wanted to have sex with Bobby, bring him downstairs, Braswell. I don't think that is even fathomable. So let's call it what he was doing. He was R-wording those people. And I can't say that on YouTube or there, whatever. But he was R-wording these women. These women had no choice but to go because they were in his custody. So this is a blatant miscarriage of justice, even with the charges, right? And also the fact that he's going to serve the sentence over 2 years. When have I ever been given the opportunity to serve any sentence at my discretion during my own time? This is the officer of the law. He should be punished more severely than less severely than the lay citizen. So this is a slap in the face to justice all across the Jestonian nation. No, that's probably not a word, but I know y'all get my drift, right? It said Braswell was ordered to surrender his law enforcement certification, participate in sex offenders program, and have no contact with the victims and their families. The plea speaks for itself, said Braswell's lawyer, Jeff Huss of Goldsboro. It was an alpha plea. He did not admit guilt, but was treated as being guilty. Now, Jeff Huss, of course, very prominent lawyer. I saw him the other day. I actually saw him at the courthouse while I was getting this information, and so his connections with the DA and, these backroom deals, as I always mention, this is how things go. They had already talked to him. He already knew he wasn't going to get no time. They didn't want to go to trial. Now, that's why I tell all my young brothers, when you're facing a crime, never take a plea, because the last thing they want to do is go to trial. So the day before, in the morning, when they got the jurors already there, they're going to come to you with the best plea ever. And then if you feel like taking it, then you take it. But, if you're not guilty, go to trial, because, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be found not guilty, because prosecutors are never prepared. They have too big of a caseload to be focused on your case. Their job is to get pleas, as you see. And of course, with this case, he got a very favorable plea. And then they go on to explain the Alford plea. Defendants can plead guilty, not guilty, no contest, or invoke the Alford plea. Assistant Attorney General summarized the state case, saying the acts occurred either in the Sheriff Department's investigations room or in 2 of the victims' home. The 2 women are sisters. The family hired a private investigator to videotape one incident in the home. And so he was actually going to the lady's home. So this is, this goes beyond, those custodial charges. And with him being an investigator, once again, we've seen police officers use their investigative authority or their law enforcement authority to coerce people. Hey, if you don't have sex with me, I'm going to take you to jail. I'm going to make sure you are convicted, which is basically our word. You know what I'm saying? Have women forced to have sex amongst their will, indirectly. But Murphy said Braswell had a pattern of taking the women from the jail to the investigations room. The incidents took place between March 27th and April 13th, just before Braswell was charged. Several of the victims and many sheriff officers attended the hearing. A trial on the charges had been postponed numerous times because of the lawyers' scheduling conflicts. When the allegations surfaced, Sheriff Cariff Winder said that he began an internal investigation and then requested a further inquiry by the State Bureau of Investigation. SBI Special Agent Marshall Tucker investigated the case for 2 years and presented it to the grand jury. Braswell resigned April 16th from the department that he had joined in 1984 as a part-time special deputy. He was promoted by former Sheriff James Sasser to a full-time child support enforcement officer. When Winders was elected sheriff in 1994, to his first term, he promoted Braswell to detective. Since he resigned, Braswell managed the last of his family's chain of convenience stores until selling it. He now manages a farm in Greene County. So that allegation of him being, part of the Bob's chain convenience stores was true. After Tuesday's hearing, Winder said he did not condone what Braswell did, nor do I tolerate any unethical conduct by an employee. Winder said Braswell's admission in no way reflects on the professionalism, dedication, integrity, and trustworthiness of our employees who diligently serve the citizens of this county. It is my belief and hope that the people are able to see beyond this incident and recognize that one individual's actions do not reflect the professionalism of the entire organization. Now, that is the totality of the articles that I found on this case. But, as I mentioned throughout this, because of Mr. Braswell's prominence, as it mentioned, the family's chain of Bob's grocery store. So he, in these small towns, like I said, the sons and then, the members of families of, people who are very influential in the financial sector, they get passes. They get passes, as we seen with, the guy Williford. I think his name was Woodard the other day, with the DWI and his slap on the wrist bond. But this just goes on to show, once again, that Wayne County has a history of, being selective with its tough on crime stance. Very selective in its prosecution and its holding the judicial system to what it is. This man was accused of having sex with inmates while they were in custody. Let's call it what it is. He wasn't, those girls probably were not doing it under their own free will. The man came from a powerful family. He was in a powerful position, and the women, felt like they had no other choice, which is pretty much, what it is. Now, also, I did hear and receive word that there was a lawsuit that the individuals got. Wasn't a lot of money, maybe $10,000-$20,000. That's about what they pay out around here for lawsuits. So I reached out to one of the victims. I through the grapevine, I heard who was one of the victims. I sent them a message on Facebook, and of course they declined to comment. I think then they deactivated that Facebook page, actually. So probably there was a non-disclosure agreement that forced them not to be able to comment after receiving the money, hush money, be quiet about this. But Mr. Braswell was basically allowed to ride off into sunset after R-wording, in my opinion, 5 women because of his position, because of his ties, and because of the propensity of the Wayne County judicial system to favor some more than others. Now, once again, Mr. Braswell, if I'm not mistaken, did deceased last year, but this is not a recommendation of how the judicial system is supposed to work. There's supposed to be equity, liberty, and justice for all. Now, justice sometimes doesn't mean somebody right and wrong. Justice means you getting punished for the wrong that you do. And so this is a opportunity of, injustice, because, this man, clearly, and actually I had videotape of him violating women in this county who were in distress. When you're in jail, you're in distress. You know what I mean? So those women, I'm pretty sure that they did not want to do what they did. So I just wanted to bring that because, we're looking at a lot of injustice in this town. And, so hopefully this gives people an idea what goes on. Even though this happened 25 years ago, there's still a system in place, what a lot of people call the good old boy system, that watches out for their own while everyone else has to fend for themselves. But if you have any information concerning this case or any other case, feel free to reach out, 919-587-7782, or you can email me at taylorpublishinghouse@gmail.com. Thank y'all for tuning in. Remember to like, share, tell your family members to watch, man. I think I put out some interesting comments and or commentary or content, whatever they say. But I just try to keep people informed about certain issues that, everybody need to know about it. But nevertheless, peace and love. Y'all have a blessed day.
Hit subscribe and invite your family and friends to watch.
From Wayne County to the Carolina coast, Taylor House, bring the news you love most. Tune in on YouTube, don't miss a beat. Little stories that keep you in your feet.
Taylor House, we got the scoop.
Taylor House Publishing.